Rumi Meets Her Father. The night Huntrix closed their latest tour was one of those evenings that made you wonder if the world could ever get any brighter. The stadium lights still shimmered in the distance, and even though the band was already backstage, the echoes of thousands of fans screaming their names carried through the walls like the final notes of a song that refused to fade away. For Rumi, it was the kind of night she would have been celebrating, relishing the glow of being part of the most powerful idol group alive, guardians of the Hun Moon and saviors of humanity. But her reflection in the dressing room mirror told a different story. She wasn't basking in the glitter or the glory. Her eyes kept drifting to the faint glow of the markings curling along her arm, the ones she always kept hidden beneath stage costumes and charm bracelets. They pulsed now, as if alive, as if waiting for something. She pressed her hands against them, heart pounding. "Rumi, you're spacing out again," Juno's voice cut through the haze. He leaned against the doorframe, his casual grin hiding the fact that he'd noticed everything. He always did. "I'm fine," she muttered, but even though she could hear how thin her voice was. Fine. That was a lie. She hadn't been fine since the fight with Jiwa. Since that moment in the Hun Moon, when her energy ripped through reality itself and let other demons seep into the world. Since she realized she wasn't just a hunter, she was half demon. She knew her father was out there somewhere. Celine had confirmed it long ago, though never with details. Celine spoke of him with the kind of tight-lipped silence that made Rumi's stomach twist. Was he alive? Was he dangerous? Did he care? These were questions that haunted her more than the cheers of a million fans ever could soothe. Tonight, though, there was no need to ask. Tonight, she felt it. The unmistakable pull of something in her blood called her forward. And when she slipped away from the others, ducking out of the arena and into the darkened streets of Seoul, she wasn't surprised to find someone waiting for her. The figure leaned against the lamppost at the edge of the Hun Moon's faint shimmer. His coat was dark, his face hidden in the shadows, but those markings on his skin, the same glowing patterns that wound along her own arms, were undeniable. Her breath caught. "You're late," he said, voice deep, tinged with humor. "Took you long enough to find me." Rumi froze. "You!" He stepped into the light, and she saw him clearly for the first time. Tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes like burning coal and an expression that looked equal parts regret and relief. He smiled faintly, though it didn't reach his eyes. "I'm your father." The words hit harder than any punch. Her mouth went dry. She'd imagined this moment 1,000 times, always with a different outcome. Sometimes he was kind and loving, sometimes cruel and monstrous. But standing here, the real version of him was so much more complicated. "You knew about me all this time?" her voice cracked. "Of course," he said. "You were never far from my thoughts, but thoughts don't cross the Hun Moon." She wanted to scream at him, to demand why he hadn't fought harder, why he hadn't found a way to be there when she needed him most. Instead, all that came out was, "Why now?" He sighed, glanced toward the shimmering barrier of the Hun Moon. "Because Jiwa's defeat changed everything. Demons are free to move again. And because you're not a child anymore, you're ready to know the truth." "The truth?" The word hung heavy. She clenched her fist. "Then tell me, all of it." He studied her for a long time, as though weighing whether she could handle what he carried. Then he began. He told her of the night he met Celine, her mother, in the middle of a war neither of them had truly chosen. How hunters and demons were destined to fight, but for one fragile moment, two enemies saw something human in each other. He told her of the choice he made, a deal with Jima, a mistake that chained him to the demon realm for centuries. And he told her how he thought about her every day, his daughter, who was neither fully hunter nor fully demon, but something rare, something dangerous. The more he spoke, the more the markings on her arm burned. She wanted to believe him, but a voice inside whispered, he could be lying. Demons lied. That's what they did. "You think you can just show up after all this time and be my dad?" Her voice shook with anger. "No, His answer was immediate, honest, painful. I can't undo what I've done, but I can give you something no one else can. The truth about yourself, about what you're capable of. And then, as if on cue, the world cracked. A tremor split the ground beneath them, the air rippling with unnatural heat. Rumi spun around to see shadows slithering out of the hun-moon, faceless demons clawing their way through the breach. Huntrix should have been there, but tonight it was just her and him. Her father raised a hand, dark energy swirling in his palm. Fight with me, daughter. She hesitated, fear and fury twisting inside her. He was a demon, but he was also the only one who knew how to fight like this, with power that matched hers. And so, for the first time, Rumi unleashed it all. Her body surged with demonic strength, her movements faster, sharper. She teleported across the battlefield, striking demons before they could even sense her presence. Her father fought alongside her, his attacks brutal and precise, the two of them moving as if they had trained together for years. When the last faceless horde dissolved into the ash, she stood panting, staring at him. That, he said, chest heaving, is only the beginning of what you can do. Her heart raced. She hated how good it felt, how natural, how fun. The thought of using her powers this way terrified her. You're trying to corrupt me, she accused. No, he said, stepping closer. I'm trying to prepare you, because if Jima rises again, and he will, you will need every ounce of strength you have, even the parts you're afraid of. For a long moment, they just stared at each other, the silence filled with years of absence and longing. And for the first time, Rumi didn't know which side she was on. Could he be redeemed? Or was this just another trick, a carefully played hand to win her over? She didn't know. But as his hand reached out, not to grab her, but to rest gently on her shoulder, she didn't pull away. Maybe this was just the beginning of something, or maybe it was the beginning of the end. Either way, Rumi had finally met her father, and nothing would ever be the same again. Zoey's mum. Zoey had always been the mystery of Huntrix. Sure, Rumi was the one with the glowing demon markings, the one who could break reality just by stepping onto a stage. But Zoey carried herself like she knew something the rest of the world didn't. She never spoke much about her childhood, and when she did, it was in clipped fragments that left her bandmates with more questions than answers. They all had their secrets, of course. Rumi's heritage was the most obvious. Mira had scars she never explained. Even Celine, the mastermind behind Huntrix, seemed like she was hiding more than she revealed. But Zoey? Zoey was different. She had the sort of silences that felt deliberate, like she was constantly holding back the truth. One night, after a long rehearsal, Rumi found her in the practice room long after everyone else had gone. Zoey sat on the floor with her back against the mirrored wall, staring at an old folded flyer in her hands. Rumi didn't mean to snoop, but when the paper caught the light, she froze. She knew that logo. It was the Sunlight Sisters, the legendary trio of hunters who had come before Huntrix, who had sealed away demons decades earlier. The same group Celine herself had been a part of, the same group that included Rumi's mother. You're a fan? Rumi asked carefully, though the question felt flimsy even as she said it. Zoey looked up sharply, startled, then smoothed the paper as if she had been caught with contraband. Something like that, she said. Something like that, Rumi repeated, crossing her arms. That's not just fan merch, that's vintage. Zoey hesitated. Her usual sharp wit softened, and for once she looked almost vulnerable. It belonged to my mom. Rumi blinked. That was new. She had never heard Zoey mention her mother before. She loved them, Zoey added quickly, stuffing the flyer into her bag. Especially Celine. The way she said it made Rumi's stomach twist. Not just admiration, not just fangirl affection, something heavier. Before Rumi could ask more, Celine herself entered the room, her presence as commanding as ever. She glanced between them, eyes narrowing slightly at the tension hanging in the air. It's late. You should both be resting. Tomorrow's schedule won't wait for tired faces. Zoey rose immediately, slipping her bag over her shoulder and brushing past Celine without another word. Rumi lingered. Uni? Did you know Zoe's mom? Celine's face didn't flicker. Not even a muscle moved. Go to bed, Rumi. It was a no. That was the first crack in the silence, and once Rumi noticed it, she couldn't stop tugging at it. Over the next few weeks, whispers began to grow among the fandom too. Online theories spouted like wildfire, fueled by blurry screenshots and old fan-recorded clips. Some fans claimed they spotted Zoey holding Sunlight Sisters memorabilia during a live stream. Others pointed out that her fighting style on stage, her precision, the way she seemed to move half a second before her opponent even attacked, was eerily familiar to footage of one of the Sunlight Sisters. The third Sunlight Sister, the one no one ever talked about. Rumi's mother had died in battle. Celine had retired and become Huntrick's producer. But the third? She had vanished. No death confirmed, no public farewell, just gone. It didn't take long for the theory to catch fire. Zoey's mother was the missing Sunlight Sister. And once Rumi heard it, she couldn't unhear it. One evening, Huntrix was in the studio running vocals when the subject came up casually. Or at least Mira thought it was casual. So, Zoey, Mira said as she fiddled with her headset, was your mom really American? Because your accent slips sometimes. Zoey's hand froze midair. Mic half raised to her mouth. She grew up in Burbank, she said after a pause. California. And she did, Mira trailed off, sensing the tension in the room. Drop it, Zoey snapped, her voice sharper than any note she could ever hit. The session ended early that night. But Rumi couldn't drop it. Later, when they were walking home under the neon lights of Seoul, she caught Zoey's sleeve. Why won't you tell us? Rumi asked. Zoey sighed, looking more tired than angry. Because it doesn't matter. My mom isn't part of this world anymore. But she was, wasn't she? Rumi pressed. She was a hunter. She was one of them. Zoey froze, her jaw tightening. For a heartbeat, Rumi thought she'd deny it. But instead, Zoey whispered, You don't understand what you're asking. And then she walked away. The truth didn't come until weeks later, when Huntrix found themselves ambushed outside a venue. A breach in the Hunmoon had let demons slip through, and though the group fought with practiced precision, their enemies were more ruthless than usual. Rumi nearly lost control of her powers again, her markings glowing so fiercely they threatened to tear the street apart. That was when Zoey snapped. Not in fear, not in panic, but in something else, something practiced. She moved with a fury that didn't come from training under Celine. It was older, rawer. She fought like someone who had been taught long before Huntrix ever existed. She fought like a Sunlight Sister. When the last demon dissolved into ash, Rumi couldn't hold it in anymore. Zoey, she gasped. Who taught you that? Zoey stood in the rubble, chest heaving, sweat shining on her forehead. For a long time she said nothing. Then quietly she answered, My mom. Rumi swallowed. The missing Sunlight Sister. Silence. Finally Zoey nodded. It all spilled out after that, not in one grand confession, not in fragments over the following days. Her mother had been the third Sunlight Sister. After Rumi's mother died and the team fractured, she fled to America, trying to carve out a normal life. But the hunters never really escaped their past. She raised Zoey with one eye always on the shadows, training her to defend herself, to fight, to survive. When Zoey's parents split, her mother brought her to Korea, where she eventually reconnected with Celine. Celine had seen something in her, talent, potential, legacy, and offered her a place in Huntrix. But it wasn't just about talent. It was about guilt, about redemption, about Celine's need to tie up old wounds. And Zoey had gone along with it, not because she wanted fame, but because part of her believed she was meant to finish what her mother started. Rumi listened, torn between awe and heartbreak. You should have told us, she whispered. Zoey shook her head. It's not that simple. My mom left because she couldn't live with what happened. If the world knew who she was, if they knew who I was, Huntrix wouldn't stand a chance. Rumi wanted to argue, but she couldn't, because she knew secrets could destroy a group. She had seen what happened to the Sunlight Sisters, and she feared the same thing could happen to Huntrix. Still, the knowledge hung between them, unspoken but undeniable. Zoey wasn't just another hunter plucked from obscurity. She was the daughter of a legend, carrying a legacy she had never asked for but couldn't escape. And somewhere out there, her mother was still alive, hiding, watching. Maybe she'd abandoned the fight, or maybe she was waiting for the right moment to return. But one thing was certain. The story of the Sunlight Sisters wasn't over, and Zoey's mom was the key to unlocking it. Next, new villain. The stage lights still shimmered in their minds long after the final encore. Huntrix had saved the world, rebuilt the Hun Moon, and, just for good measure, topped the charts with their newest single. For once, the girls allowed themselves a breath. No more fire raining down from Jima's claws, no more demonic boy bands luring fans into the abyss, no more cracks in the Hun Moon tearing the sky apart, just fans screaming their names, glittering light sticks waving like stars, and the soft reminder that, for now, they were safe. Or so they thought. The first whispers of trouble came not in flames or shadows, but in music. During a rehearsal in their practice room, a strange hum slipped beneath their harmonies, low, almost metallic, and too deliberate to be feedback. Zoey froze mid-step, her ear cocked. "Did you hear that?" she asked, eyes flickering towards the mirrors. Mira shrugged. Sweat dripped from her temple. Probably just the sound system. But the hum continued, swelling into a faint, unworldly chant that curled like smoke under the floorboards. Rumi felt her markings burn faintly, the way they always had when Jima was near. Only Jima was gone, sealed behind the Hun Moon. Wasn't he? Celine's voice echoed in her mind, the warning given years ago. The Hun Moon seals one door, but never all of them. Old demons are patient. They wait. Rumi clenched her jaw. Old demons? That night, while the others slept, she dreamed of them, ancient, cracked-skinned creatures with eyes like dripping tar. They stood in Jima's shadow, centuries of loyalty carved into their bones. Unlike the Saja boys, who still looked almost human when they smiled, these were beings who delighted in pain, in the slow unraveling of humanity. Some had traded their souls willingly for power, some had been forced, but all had been sharpened by centuries under Jima's rule. Now, free from his leash, they wanted their own spotlight. When Rumi spoke, her pillow was damp with sweat. She whispered into the dark, "He's not the last of them." The next morning, Huntrix met with their manager. He slammed a glossy magazine on the table. "Congratulations," he announced. "Your song has topped every chart. But, also, there's this." On the cover was a brand new boy band, their faces perfect, their smiles razor sharp. The headline read, "The New Kings of K-Pop." The Saja boys were gone. The industry had a new darling group. Huntrix squinted at the photo. Their eyes gleamed just a little too red under the camera lights. Zoey groaned. "Oh, come on, again." This time it wasn't the Saja boys. This was another group, fresh-faced, their fans' chants already rattling through the online forums. They had the same intoxicating pull, the same unnatural charisma. Huntrix knew the signs. Another demon had slipped through, wearing sequins and eyeliner, ready to build a following. "They're calling themselves the Velvet Serpents," Mira muttered. She tossed the magazine back. "Figures." But even as they joked, unease coiled in their stomachs. Jima had barely been defeated. Could his methods already be repeating? And then came the vision. Zoey was the first to see it. A staircase carved in obsidian, leading higher and higher into a void. At the top stood not Jima, but something worse. She spoke, screaming. The name stuck in her throat. "His superior!" If Jima had bowed to anyone, then Huntrix hadn't faced the true apex predator yet. Somewhere in the abyss, stronger demons existed, watching, calculating, amused by the mess their underline had made. And now, perhaps, They were done waiting. Huntrix tightened their rehearsals, mixing melodies with battle stances again. But something else was stirring closer to home. During a fan signing, a girl approached Mira with a terrible smile. "My mom says hunters aren't supposed to cry," she whispered. "But sometimes, don't you?" The question pierced like a blade. Hunters had always carried the weight of perfection, never showing weakness. But what if one of them, one who had borne the pressure too long, had broken? What if an old hunter, one forced into silence and shame, had gone rogue? That night, Rumi confessed her worry. If one of them turned, if they carried the same power as us, but used it wrong, they'd be unstoppable, Zoey finished grimly. The thought lingered. Somewhere, a rogue hunter could be sharpening their voice into a weapon, singing not to heal, but to wound. And then, her father. Rumi had never spoken of him much. The marks on her arm, inherited from him, had always been her silent burden. But one rainy evening, as thunder rattled the windows, she dreamed again, this time of a man with her eyes, standing in Jima's flame-lit realm. He reached for her, his voice thick with regret. "Rumi, I never got to see you grow, but I'm not gone, not yet." She jolted awake, her arms burning hotter than ever. If her father still lived, or half lived, he could return. But would he come as family or as foe? Before she could untangle that knot, another storm broke loose. The Saja boys weren't finished. When Huntrix performed at a sold-out stadium, the lights suddenly cut to black. A hush rippled through the crowd. Then, one by one, familiar voices crooned over the speakers. Smooth, mocking, venomous. "Miss us?" The stage erupted in fire. And there they were, shadows of the Saja boys, their forms twisted, their eyes burning brighter than ever. Banished once, they crawled their way back, hungrier, angrier. The crowd screamed, some in terror, some in blind devotion. Huntrix stood frozen, the ghosts of their old rivals smirking inches away. "They've come for revenge," Zoey whispered. The battle that followed tore through the stage, smoke curling around shattered lights and broken instruments. Fans fled while Huntrix sang through the chaos, their harmonies clashing with the Saja boys' venomous hooks. For every note Huntrix sent to strengthen the Hun Moon, the boys answered with a discordant scream to tear it down. It was Mira who finally held her ground, voice cracking but fierce. "You don't get to win twice," she shouted, her note rising so sharp it sliced through the smoke. The boys faltered, retreating back into the shadow, but their laughter lingered. "We'll be back," they taunted, "and next time you won't have your little fans to protect you." After the stadium incident, Huntrix couldn't shake the feeling that enemies lurked everywhere. Ancient demons, Jima superiors, rogue hunters, angry idols, even Rumi's own bloodline. Their days of easy rehearsals were gone. Every stage could turn into a battlefield, every song a weapon, every encore a last stand. And yet, in the quiet moments after, when the lights dimmed and the crowds faded, Huntrix still felt the same pulse in their veins, the rhythm that bound them, the music that made them who they are. Whatever villain came next, they would face them together. Because the world didn't just need idols, it needed hunters. And Huntrix were both. Somewhere, deep below in the cracks of the Hun Moon, a voice purred in the dark. "They think they've won. They think they've seen the worst of us. Let's show them what true despair sounds like." The echoes promised one thing. The next new villain was already waiting in the wings.